Well, hello everyone. I'm Rob Kiroli and welcome to this Wisdom of Highlights business webinar by Two Wise Heads. It's a collaboration between me and Paul Thewlis, who today will introduce us to web forensics and how to use it to outsmart your competition. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Rob, and hello everyone online, and thanks a lot for coming to listen today. I'm excited to be sharing web forensics with you over the next 30 minutes, so I hope you have your lunch and removed any distractions. I'm going to introduce some leading edge techniques which will really make you look at your business and your marketing on the internet in a whole new light.
Okay, Paul, so can you give us an introduction to web forensics?
Yeah, sure, Rob. Well, firstly, it relates to businesses getting more out of internet marketing. But let's start with a typical type of approach we see to online marketing illustrated in this slide that I'm just about to show you. In the middle here, we have our typical company going about its day-to-day business of selling and delivering its products and services. Over in this top left corner of the business is a filing cabinet where we'll find the business plan. In another corner of the business is our website, and our web developer has attached Google Analytics. But we don't look at the analytics much, and when we do, to be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense beyond knowing how many people seem to be coming to the site. Over in another corner of the business is a company we've been paying for some SEO to get us to the top of Google. They give us a monthly report of where we rank for some keywords, and that seemed to be working okay for a while, but frankly, lately it seems to be going backwards. Oh, and in the other corner, we've decided to try some social media. We've got a Facebook page and some posts, and we've done some posts, and we're on LinkedIn, and we're connected with a few people. And what do you think? Should we be on Twitter? We really don't quite know, but if we're honest, we're not quite sure what all the social media hype is all about.
Okay, Paul, so what you're saying is that all these things are happening in the business almost in isolation from each other with no coordinated approach?
Yes, it can get a mess, and the business ends up doing a lot of work for not much result.
Okay, so web forensics is going to address this for us then?
Yeah, that's right. So broadly, web forensics involves an audit of how the business is currently performing online, an investigation of where the business wants to head, an identification of where potential customers relevant to the business objectives can be found and in quantity, and recommendations for actions to connect with, engage, and ultimately sell to our online audience.
Okay, so you can relate that back to your typical company on the previous slide?
Yes, let's go back to that slide. Firstly, we'll get an understanding, the first part of the process is we'll get an understanding of how the day-to-day sales and product and service delivery works. Then we'll examine Google Analytics for the website, so to see where people are coming from and what they're doing when they get to the site. Then we'll focus on the business plan and, in its absence, if they don't have one, the business management's view of where they want to head. Then we head across to use some SEO analytics tools to see what our target market is most likely to be searching. The question here is whether our business's location on Google is the online equivalent of a busy shopping centre mall or a lonely arcade in a suburban shopping strip. Assuming we're not ranking #1 for the high volume search term, we then look at our competitors who are ranking at the top. We find out what they're doing right, copy it, and improve on it. Finally, we interrogate the social media landscape to find our audience and what they are interested in. Ultimately, this will bring us both improved Google rankings and real people to our website and business.
All right, so that all seems quite logical, Paul. We've promised people a case study as well.
Yes, I think that's probably the best way of actually getting to understand what I'm talking about.
Okay, so we had to think about what business to use for this, and it's difficult because we don't want to give away too much of Paul's client business secrets here. So I actually offered Paul to use one of my businesses as a case study. Some, as you know, photography and especially portrait photography has been a passion of mine for many years, and I've developed that into a hobby business, or more accurately, a secondary business to my business coaching practice. It's one I've put a little bit of marketing effort into, but not really in a major way. So there's a lot of upside potential for me. This business is called Photos That Tell, and here's an image of my homepage.
Yes, and when we discussed using it, you're worried that we might not have enough data to work with, but really your business, even though it's a secondary interest for you, is really in much the same place as many small businesses. The website's up and open for business, but from an online perspective, it's still located down that small arcade somewhere.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where this is going to lead, Paul. So where do we start?
Okay, so we start with the history of what's been happening on your website so far. We'll look at Google Analytics. So you can see this graph here. The story begins with a look at the traffic volumes from the beginning of 2013 until now. We see small but growing volumes from around 50 visits per month in early 2013 to around 120 per month now.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you've been able to show an increase at least.
Yeah. Once people get to the site, we can also look at what they do when they get there. Here's a flow diagram showing what pages people are landing on, and where do they go to after that. There is some investigation needed here to turn visits into sales, but from today's presentation, we'll just focus on getting people to the site rather than on what they do once they get to the site. There's a whole other area to look at there.
Okay, so how do you know how people get to the site, Paul?
Yes, so this table shows that referrals are the biggest source of sessions. The sessions we'll call visits. These are where people follow links from other websites to yours. So we've got 722 referrals there.
Okay, and what sites do they come from?
Well, here there is some good news and some bad news. On this slide, we break down the referrals by source. You'll see 4 red crosses which indicate these are links you either don't want at all or you don't want in your data. So they don't help us at all. The ones marked with green arrows are genuine links from relevant websites.
Yeah, so I can recognise them. They come from things I've done on those sites and I use them regularly. I know them very well.
Right, and the orange arrows are directory sites.
Yes, which I gather from listings I've purchased. So based on losing all those referrals with the red crosses, then it seems that Google searches give me more visits to my site.
It looks like it, and the question is, what are people searching on Google to get to your site? Sadly, you'll see that data on most searches is not provided. This is typical because browser privacy settings. The limited data we do have shows 2 types of searches. The orange arrows are brand searches, which are searches where people already know you and are searching for you specifically. This is very common where people type into Google and don't worry about typing the .com or the .com.au at the end of your website address. The green are our subject searches, and these are the ones we're chasing.
Okay, but it doesn't tell us a lot because we're missing so much data, aren't we?
You're true. Now, in our promotion, we talked about the science and the art of web forensics. Here's where some art comes into play. Let's go to another part of our analytics, which looks at the pages where people are landing on the website. We can see here that they are mainly landing on the home page, but a number of other pages as well. Then if you look at this brand search on Google, you can see there are multiple pages showing up for this brand search. We can match most of the landings on the web page to the brand-related searches, except for a few terms. The main non-branded search one is couples boudoir photography. So having done this analysis, we now have a true understanding of what's happening on the site. So I'm going to leave Google Analytics and look at another tool we use to look at Google rankings. It shows each term where your website is ranking in the top 20. In your case, the site's only ranked in the top 20 for one term, which is the couple's boudoir photography that we've just seen on our analytics, and so this explains where the traffic is coming from. On other sort of bigger sites, we'll see a longer list of terms where people would be ranking.
Okay, so the site ranking is number 18 for that search term.
Yep.
But what does the 30 in the volume column mean, Paul?
That's the number of searches in the last month for that term. Going back to our shop analogy, it's effectively a measure of how many people are going past our shop.
So that's not very many people at all. What about the other keyword search terms?
Here's a wider list, and I've found boudoir photography is more popular as a term.
Okay, but what if we widen the term to just photography then?
Yes, here we can see there are lots of other terms with higher traffic in the table here, but relevancy comes into play now.
Yeah, so I can see lots of wedding-related terms, and I don't do weddings, and also people searching photography, maybe looking for photos, or they may want to be actually learning photography or a number of other reasons.
Even though photography has lots of searches, it may be a waste of time chasing high rankings because people aren't, looking to get photographs taken necessarily. So let's take a look at photographers rather than photography as a term. This might be more relevant to what you're selling. At this point, we're looking to link in with the business planning process to really focus in on what it is that we're selling and what the average person would be searching. Excuse me. We need to be careful not to focus on terms used by people in the industry, but rather common or lay terms that our potential customers would use. So this requires a bit of time working through, but for the sake of this webinar, we'll just take the term Melbourne photographers. This is the one that we're going to sort of zone in on. Here is now then the top ranking sites for this particular term. What we're going to do now is benchmark our site against the top ranking site. Normally we might take a few different sites.
Okay, so what will we benchmark, Paul?
Okay, first of all, we see where the traffic site's coming from. And we can see it's ranking number 1, 2, or 3 for various combinations of Melbourne and photographer, which leads to 94% of the search traffic for this site.
So do we know why this site is ranking so highly?
Yeah, we can investigate that. Google has around about 200 factors they use for search ranking, but these are not published. So we can only go by industry knowledge and experience. But this slide shows some technical comparisons between your site and the competitor benchmark.
Okay, so what's the domain authority, Paul?
Domain authority is an estimate by the tool we use of what we think Google ranking would be based upon a basket of factors. It's a bit like the Consumer Price Index. These include on-page factors, i.e. the content of your site, and off-page factors like links to the site. Something like Wikipedia would have a ranking of 100. So quickly going down the table, we see that the competitor has more links from other websites, has more social media shares, likes, and tweets. So we can see we need more of these particular things for your site. We can also assess on-page factors for your site and for the competitors for our particular target term, Melbourne photographers. The tool looks at 27 factors and rates each site based upon each site factor based upon importance and ease of fixing the issue. Your site is unfortunately graded an F and the competitor is graded a B. So the good news is if you change the things that we've identified, there is scope to outperform the competition by getting it graded as an A.
Okay, so it seems we can get the website fixed, but how do we get all those links and social media likes?
Yeah, so this is where things get really interesting. First, we have to decide who our target market is. In social media speak, that's who is our audience. Now, talking to you previously, I think the two audiences which would have high interest in your particular service would be models and actors, whether they're professionals or learning or amateur/hobbyists, I suppose.
Yeah, there would be others, but that's a pretty good start for sure, Paul.
So our web forensics project now needs to find out where they are on the internet and what they're interested in.
Okay, so what are we trying to achieve here?
We know our audience is searching Google for information. We know our audience is attracted to various types of content on social media. We can be pretty sure they'll turn off if we just keep talking about features of our products and services. We use content that is interesting to our audience to both attract real people, clicking through links and the like, and garnering links and shares and those sorts of things to improve our Google rankings through the automatic crawlers that they use.
Okay, so I'll see on this slide some suggested approaches.
Yeah, so let's run through these quickly. So it's very summary here, but this will give you some ideas. So this first slide you won't be able to read in detail, but what it shows is that we can list out all the sites linking to our competitor. So not our site, to our competitor. And here we show a bar chart of the number of links from each of the linking sites. And you'll see there are lots of links from sites, from some of the sites, you know, the largest one being 83 links from that particular site. So how do we beat our competitors? We do what they do and do it better. Look at the sites linking to them and work out how we can do the same. Next slide, we find people that are our target audience. We find the people that our target audience is listening to on social media. We use another tool to do this. Here's an example of, what we're looking for is influencers for that group. And here's an example of the top 2 influencers that we've identified with our tools for models. We can see how many followers they have, and we can look at various other factors such as how much of their content is being reshared by other people. So we can reach out and build a two-way relationship with these influencers. In the end, they help drive traffic to your site. Then we look at Facebook. Facebook has amazing demographics which 1.4 billion users contribute to on a daily basis. In this example, you'll see we can identify 14,200 people who live in Melbourne that are aged between 30 and 45 who are interested in acting. There's also the emerging Facebook graph search, which you can, it's not broadly available in Australia, but you can use to target in on your audience by searching for them through the Facebook graph search. Then we move on to discussion groups, and we're looking for discussion groups that are specifically set up for your target market, but they're not necessarily directly concerned about your product or service. So LinkedIn has loads of them. Here's an example of one with over 2,000 members. They won't all be in Melbourne, but sharing content in these groups with links back to your site could be very valuable for your Google ranking. And then finally, you'll know this one, Rob, because you're already getting links from the site.
Yeah, that's an industry site for models and photographers and the like.
Yeah, and they have a forum on the site. So industry forums are great to join, where you can share information, and this will earn you leads, and it'll earn you links back to your website.
Okay, so we've been through some great ideas about where to find your audience. How do we make the connection?
Yeah, there are a number of techniques. Here's one approach. Again, using one of the tools in our kit bag, we can search the social media landscape for popular content. Here are 2 examples off the top of a list that we've generated that mention articles that mention or content that mentions models and photography. You can see the top one of these has 29,000 shares and the other 24,000 shares. We can see on which social networks that they have shared, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google, and we can investigate who is sharing that content. So what we do is we copy the ideas there, improve on the on popular topics, and push that out through the networks who have proven already to have shown interest in that sort of information.
Wow, 29,000 shares, Paul. That's an amazing amount of interest.
Sure is.
Yeah. Now, Paul, just before we take some questions, can you just summarise what this means for us in this case study? Can I remind listeners before you do to just post any questions you've got in the chat box on the right hand side of the screen, and we'll address them after Paul does his quick summary here.
Okay, well, here's what we have now for your site. Just in brief summary dot points here. What we've done is we've now got a proper understanding of the website's performance. We've got an alignment of our online marketing with the business direction. We've identified Google search opportunities where the market is. We've identified ways to improve on-page Google ranking performance. We've got ways to build links and shares to improve that ranking. We've got new ways to find our audience. And we've got new knowledge about what interests our audience on the internet, which may be different than what necessarily you have a conversation with them in the operation of your business. We're actually seeing what attracts them on the internet.
So thanks, Paul, for a very enlightening webinar. I can certainly see a lot I can do with my website, and I'm sure our listeners will be keen to have some web forensics done on their site soon. So how can they contact you?
Right, so our contact details are on the Two Wise Heads website, and you'll see on the slide our email address here for both myself and Rob's also. So we'd be very pleased to explore this topic with you a bit further on a one-to-one basis.
Excellent. So look, thanks to everyone for joining us today. May all your business decisions be wise ones.